If you have already tried bleeding your brakes and also tried overhauling your brake caliper and still have a faded brakes, let's see how to fix that issue in this video. In order to get access to the master cylinder, let's start by removing the footrest assembly. It is held by two Allen bolts. Remove it in a crisscross pattern and you can remove the footrest out of your motorcycle. The next step is to disconnect the brake light switch from the brake pedal. It is held by this one single spring. Using a plier, just disconnect it from the brake pedal. Now the brake light switch itself is held by just locking pins which is made of plastic. Using a screwdriver, just press these plastic locks inside in order to disconnect the switch from its mounting hardware. Take extra precaution to not damage any of the plastic locks, which can in turn damage the entire switch. Once all the pins are pressed in, just pull the switch out of the holder. Now this entire master cylinder is held with these two 10mm bolts, which we need to remove using a ring spanner or a socket. Once these two bolts are removed, you can freely remove this master cylinder out of the footrest assembly. Don't forget to disconnect the push pin, which is connected to the master cylinder and the brake pedal. As shown, it can freely slide out of the master cylinder. Before doing anything further, let's start draining the brake fluid from the fluid container. Remove the fluid container's cap and also take out its rubber cap which is there inside. Using a syringe, pull out all the brake fluid that is there in the fluid container. Now let's start disassembling the master cylinder. Starting with the dust boot, just pry it open as shown. You can see the condition of the master cylinder here, which is filled with dirt, rust and grinds. Before starting its disassembly further, let's clean all this and prep it for disassembly. Using an old toothbrush and a clean piece of cloth, let's clean all this surface free from dust and grime. You can also use solvents like WD-40 to make this process even bit easier. Once the surface is thoroughly cleaned, the next step is to move on to removing the circlip. Using a circlip plier, gently remove the circlip which is holding the entire piston inside the master cylinder. You can see this is the circlip that we just removed. Now using a nose plier, gently remove the old piston out of the master cylinder assembly. You can see fluid leaking and this is pretty normal during this process. Along with the piston, there comes the spring and its other hardwares. Make sure that you have got everything in one piece. Now inside the master cylinder assembly, there is a plastic sleeve which has to be removed, and it will be pretty easy if your master cylinder is in a good shape. But in this case, it is pretty much stuck due to rust and grime. So I have to break it open, which I'm doing in this video. Using a flathead screwdriver, break the plastic sleeve, making sure that you don't damage the inner wall of the master cylinder assembly. Once the plastic sleeve is broken from all the sides, using a nose plier, gently remove the plastic sleeve out of the master cylinder. Now you can clearly see the rust formation that I was speaking about. Now there is one more thing which we need to remove from this master cylinder assembly, and that is the O-ring. Using a screwdriver, gently remove the O-ring from the master cylinder unit. Alright, your disassembly is completed. Now let's move on to cleaning the entire master cylinder free from rust and dirt. Using WD-40, clean the entire inner surface of the master cylinder using a toothbrush and a clean piece of cloth. I'm also using screwdriver to make sure that the dirt and grime is cleaned from the internal surface of the master cylinder. After cleaning thoroughly, you can see the internal surface of the master cylinder which is shining like a new one. Now to rebuild this master cylinder, you need to have a new major kit which is of part number as shown in the video. And the best part is you get almost all the components which you'll be requiring to rebuild this entire master cylinder kit except one, that is circlip. Now let's open the major kit and start the rebuild process. This is the new piston which we are going to replace with the old one. Now comparing it with the old one, you can see the amount of damage that the old one has taken, and it's time to say goodbye for this one. Now the new piston is not the only thing that we are going to install. We need other components too, which is already there in the major kit itself. Now in order to install the piston inside the master cylinder, let's pre-assemble all the components of the piston assembly just like how we removed the old unit out of the master cylinder. Starting with the washer itself, which we need to install in the rear side of the piston. There's no orientation for this washer, so you can install it anyways. Next, the rubber seal, which has to be going, keeping the small diameter side facing towards the piston. Next, this metal spacer, which you have to make sure that the small end is facing opposite of the piston side. Now on this lip, you have to install the new spring which is already there in the master cylinder assembly kit. With this, your piston is pre-assembled. Now in the major kit itself, you get this silicone grease which is very important to make this process more smoother. Make sure that you make a small cut on the silicone grease packet to avoid any wastage. Now let's apply a thin layer of silicone grease onto the new O-ring. Install the new O-ring inside the master cylinder unit and place it upright. It need not be perfect as it will be automatically aligned once you install the plastic sleeve. Now you have to make sure that you lubricate the external surface of the plastic sleeve with the silicone grease. Applying a thin layer of silicone grease on the plastic sleeve itself, spread it evenly across using your fingers. Once this is done, press with the plastic sleeve inside the master cylinder as shown. You can also use the rear end of a screwdriver to tap it in even further. Now using a socket which is the exact same diameter of the plastic sleeve, gently tap in to make sure that the entire plastic sleeve and the O-ring is seated properly. Once you have installed the plastic sleeve properly, it's time to install the piston unit. Using the silicone grease, lubricate the entire piston and its rubber seal thoroughly, making sure that the silicone grease is thoroughly coated all over the piston components. Now making sure that the spring is entered first, insert the entire piston unit inside the master cylinder. Align the rubber seal properly, making sure that you don't damage it, and insert the piston inside the master cylinder. Now since we did not get a new circlip, we will be using the old one. Gently press the piston inside and install the circlip onto its slot using the circlip plier. Once this is inserted, check with a screwdriver whether it has been seated properly in its grooves. Also confirm free movement of piston without any friction. Now let's clean the old boot which we did not get in the major kit. Using WD-40 and a clean piece of cloth, let's clean the old boot itself as shown. Press fit the dust boot in its slot as shown. Now the old push pin is also in rusty condition, which we need to clean with the same process. Once this is clean enough, using the same silicone grease, lubricate the contact point as shown. Now slide in the push pin inside the dust boot which get in contact with the piston. Holding everything as it is, install the two 10mm bolts and hand tighten it as much as possible. Now finally, tighten it completely using a ring spanner or a socket. Now the installation of the master cylinder unit onto the footrest is completed. Now let's move on to installing the brake light switch sensor onto its holder. Pass the spring into the holder and insert the brake light switch and make sure that you lock it in place. If you move the entire footrest assembly close to the bike, it will be much easier for you to do this as you will have a little space for the wire to move in. Once the brake light switch is installed, reconnect the spring onto the brake pedal. Now finally, let's install the entire brake and the footrest assembly onto the motorcycle. Hand tighten the two Allen bolts that you removed before and using an Allen key, tighten it completely and make sure that it's secured in place. Now additionally, if you want to adjust the free play, this is the best time to do it. Using a nose plier, rotate the push rod in the anti-clockwise direction to reduce the free play and rotate in the clockwise direction to increase the free play. Once the desired free play is set, lock it with the lock nut which is already provided using a 10 number open-end spanner. Now let's fill the brake fluid in the fluid container. I'm using Bajaj Dot 4 brake fluid here. After opening its seal, let's fill the container fully. I will not be showing the brake bleeding process here as I've already made 2 videos on the same, which if you want to watch, click on the link which is provided in the iCard and the description below. Now close the rubber cap followed by the plastic cap and secure it thoroughly. With this, the master cylinder service for the rear brake is completed. Now overhauling your front master cylinder is easier compared to the rear one. Start by opening the master cylinder cap which is held by 2 screws. You can literally see the condition of the master cylinder inside and it is full of sludge that is built up due to not changing the brake fluid on time. We need to make sure that the sludge buildup has been cleaned thoroughly, and in order to do that, the first step is to drain all the brake fluid out of this master cylinder unit. Using the syringe, drain all the fluid out of the master cylinder. Once this is done, spray some degreaser or WD-40 in this case and fill the master cylinder up to the brim. Next, using a flathead screwdriver, scrape out all the sludge buildup as shown. You can literally see the amount of sludge that is getting collected on the screwdriver. This is the worst condition that you can get, and always make sure that you replace your brake fluid at least once every year. Now off camera, let me clean this entire master cylinder, and this is how it looks after cleaning it thoroughly. Now the next step is to remove the 10mm bolt which is locking the pivot screw of the brake lever. Once this is removed, using a screwdriver, remove the brake lever screw out of the master cylinder. Take out the lever too, making sure that you don't damage it. We need to clean all this grease before we install it back. Pull and remove the push pin along with the dust cap. One more issue that I've noticed here is the circlip for this master cylinder is missing, and thankfully this time the circlip is included in the major kit. Using a nose plier, let's remove the piston kit out of the master cylinder, and you can see the condition of the piston in this case. You will have 2 models of piston for this master cylinder set, which is one made of metal and one of plastic. Always choose the one which is actually come with your bike. Now let's clean the surface thoroughly and prep it for the assembly process. This is the major kit that I purchased, and you can see the part number for reference. And as mentioned earlier, the circlip lock is already provided along with the kit, which is a good thing in this case. Again, applying a thin layer of silicone grease onto the new piston, spread it evenly using your fingers. Now install the new spring on the bottom part of the piston. Once this is done, install the piston facing the spring towards the master cylinder. Now using a screwdriver, push the piston inside and install the circlip using the circlip plier as shown. Confirm if the circlip is actually seated properly onto its groove. Also check if the piston is moving freely without any drag. Now apply a thin layer of silicone grease onto the push pin and install the push pin along with the new boot. Install the dust boot onto its grooves. Now I have cleaned the lever and the pivot bolt off camera, and now let's install the lever keeping the push pin onto its slot. Install the screw and tighten it with a flathead screwdriver. Don't forget to tighten the 10mm bolt which was removed before. Fill the master cylinder with fresh brake fluid, and don't forget to bleed your brakes, which can restore your braking performance. Again, find the link for the same in the iCard above or in the video description. After successfully completing the brake bleeding process, insert the rubber cap followed by the plastic cap, and finally close the master cylinder cap. Tighten its 2 screws, and your overhaul of your front master cylinder is successfully completed. And that's it folks. You have successfully restored your complete braking performance, and the fun part is you can do it yourself at home. If you people find this video informative enough, and if you people like this video, do consider subscribing to Archeonics and follow me on Instagram for more just interesting content.